All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I've got 10 a.m. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking a couple minutes out of your morning. My name is Brian Green, and welcome to our new 10 at 10 program, where we will dive into a different topic on the second Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. for 10 minutes a pop. And we hope to bring you like short, substantive blasts of information. Sometimes we may go over 10 minutes, but we thought 10 minutes was a good starting point for our new program, and we'll see how it works out. Everybody's got a busy day, and we thought 10 minutes might be the right time. And if you want more information, there's always other ways to get that, and we're happy to help with that too. So on our August program, we're still in the works. We're still figuring that one out. But in September, my colleague Andy Brownstein here at Green Hurlocker will lead a discussion on CPACE, which is the Community Property Assessed Clean Energy Lending Program. There's been some statutory and local developments there. So be on the lookout for announcements on upcoming programs. I'm sure you'll get some good Green Hurlocker spam landing in your inbox, and look at us for on LinkedIn and on Twitter as well. We put them out there. But today we're going to talk about the VCEA, and we're not going to do is summarize the act. We're going to assume that you're already familiar at least with some of the details of the act and some of the goals of the act. We're going to look more at impacts and some of the other issues. And so now let's bring in our special rock star guest, Sarah Vogelsong, who's an energy and environmental reporter with the Virginia Mercury. For the past year, Sarah has covered the General Assembly and the SCC. She brings a very unique perspective to our program and a wealth of information. So welcome, Sarah. We're really happy that you can join us this morning.
Thank you. I'm excited to be your guinea pig.
Oh, excellent, excellent. We do appreciate that. Okay, so enough niceties because we only have 9 more minutes. So let's get to it. Let's start with talking about the future impacts of the VCA. And specifically, what kind of challenges do you see in attaining the goals in the VCEA, especially the solar megawatts? Because I think a lot of the folks that have joined us this morning have solar backgrounds and interests. But what do you see as the next big challenges now that the act is law as of 2 weeks ago? What's next? What do you see as the challenges?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, and this was identified in Dominion's IRP, their long-range plan, is going to be figuring out where to site all of these, megawatts. They estimate in the IRP that the amount of land that's going to be needed to build out 16,000 megawatts of solar is 25% bigger than the entire size of Fairfax County. So that's obviously going to take a lot of land. And there's, some equity issues with that. There has to be, a lot of counties have been learning how to deal with what's already been a flood of proposals. I see Jonah Fogel is in here. I know he's worked a lot on that issue, especially down in some of the more rural counties of Southside. I mean, they've already gotten in 7, 8, 9 proposals for very, very large solar projects. So when it comes to actually putting these things in the ground and figuring out how counties can, ensure that they and their residents are protected while also meeting these goals that the Commonwealth has to transition to clean energy. I think those are going to be some of the more on the ground challenges that we're going to see throughout the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I noticed in the Dominion IRP, they're saying 10 acres for every 1 megawatt of solar. So when you add that up, that's a lot of acres. And
yes.
Do you think we'll see more localities trying to limit the amount of the solar surge, as Culpeper County called it? I think they've got a 1% limit on solar facilities there now. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing any of that or hearing any of that as potential issues?
Yeah, it's something that I think has been building in the last year. There was also various legislation that went through the General Assembly this year that the Virginia Association of Counties helped work on to try to get more resources to counties so that they know what they're dealing with, so that they can figure out when residents complain or come to them with concerns, which ones are valid and which ones are just not. They're things people are afraid of, but maybe don't necessarily have real grounding in issues. So I think it's something that the General Assembly is aware of. I think it's probably something that we may see at least future proposed legislation on in the upcoming session or down the road as we really see this building accelerate.
Right. And you would think that there's some localities that obviously now have some experience in handling permitting and land use type issues with solar projects, but there's others that have not. So
Right.
I would think that with the wealth of projects that are coming in the next, short term and long term, that these localities are going to have to get learned up pretty quickly and get resourced up pretty quickly in order to deal with some of the permit applications and issues they're about to face.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe as the process goes on, I mean, you could potentially also see it becoming easier. I mean, there haven't been a tremendous amount of utility scale solar projects that have gone in Virginia, or at least not compared to what we are likely to see in the next coming years. And so when there are things that go wrong, they have a sort of outsized impact in people's perception of them. But, if a lot of these projects go in and things go smoothly, you may also see counties' fears decrease. It all depends, right, on how that rollout proceeds.
And, how big of a discussion point during the General Assembly was the cost impacts to ratepayers as a result of all of this, all of the VCEA? I know the commission staff study showed, I think if I remember correctly, it was about $23, $25 a month for a residential average ratepayer. Are we seeing any continued discussion about the impacts, especially in this COVID world?
Yes. I mean, cost was kind of, one of the biggest, I think, points of discussion on the VCEA during the session. It was a point that the Republicans in particular pushed back a lot on. There was, almost universal Republican opposition to the VCEA. I think there were only 2 votes in favor of it. The SCC did estimate, I can't quite remember what the last estimate they put out, because they put out a few during the session, was, I think it was in the upper 20s that would be the bill impact by 2030 on the average customer's bill. The Northam administration and the SCC have sort of repeatedly disagreed, though, on what the cost impacts of this are going to be. They have found that the bill impacts are going to be, the Northam administration has found that bill impacts are going to be much, much less and could even positively affect bills. The SCC obviously sees a big impact. These 2 groups have also disagreed in the past in what the cost of Reggie is going to be on customer bills. The SCC has, over time, revised down their estimate of cost impacts. So I think that's an open question mark as to how much that's actually going to be. I think people do expect there to be some impact, though.
Now, Reggie was not in the VCA. It was a separate bill, right? But can you talk about just for a minute about the relationship between the 2?
Yeah, Reggie started out the session in the VCEA bill. And the Clean Economy Act is really, we always describe it as an omnibus bill, because it's a ton of proposals all in one. And at the beginning of the session, Reggie was combined into that, but once it eventually cleared the General Assembly on its own, because a lot of the provisions of that law went through independently, it really wasn't a sure thing during the session that VCEA was going to pass. And so what you saw was a lot of lawmakers trying to sort of build a safety net with these individual proposals and say, well, if the omnibus doesn't pass, at least we can make this advance on a mandatory RPS and energy efficiency and Reggie. And so once Reggie passed, that was one that they took out of the final VCEA and let it be its standalone.
So we have about a minute left, and I'd be remiss if we didn't at least spend a minute about the relationship between the failed ACP and the VCEA. You wrote a terrific article about this last week and how it failed. Can you kind of give us a minute primer on the relationship between the 2 and what it means, the failed ACP, what it means to the VCEA?
Yeah, what Dominion has said both with the failure of the ACP and at the exact same time that they're selling off their natural gas transmission and storage assets, is that they are really focusing their energy on renewables. They're pivoting away from natural gas in a very concrete way. Renewables are the future that they see. They also can replace their income from building projects like the ACP with building out renewables. And the VCEA does allow them to build out huge amounts of that. I mean, and they will get, returns on these capital investments that they make. And they see this as being a way to make profits as well as meeting those state goals.
Yeah, I think your quote at the end of your article was from Tom Farrell, that it was tens and tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars. 4 tens.
Yes.
So I don't know how to add that up, but that's a lot of billions. So
lots of money.
So, okay, so I think our 10 minutes is up, so that does go really fast. One thing, so this was intended, again, just to be a very kind of high-level discussion point, and also, like Sarah said, this is our first one, so if there's recommendations on how to make it better, drilling down on certain topics, perhaps, things like that. But Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Now, if you are interested in more about the VCEA, in the chat function is a link to the DMME website. The DMME, and together with the governor's office, is going to have a 5-series webinar for an hour and a half each, one a week. And feel free to go check that out. It looks like an awesome program. And we told our friends at the DMME that we would plug it for them. So check that out. We certainly will be doing that. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you have any questions, or if you want to stick around and ask Sarah a couple questions, please feel free to do so. Or if you can email us directly with follow-up questions or whatever questions we didn't get to today. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.